All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our Beef Brunch news update for the weekend in August the 19th. So this will actually be published on Tuesday, August the 23rd. Today we've got Mr. Vince Deshotel down in central and southwest Louisiana, Mr. Lee Faulk, northwest Louisiana, and myself, Jason Holmes, over in the northeast. So Dr. Ashley Edwards is enjoying her some much needed time off, and um, we all need to take advantage of that from time to time. And she saw an opportunity and is enjoying her a little bit of time off. So we'll catch her on the next time. We've got a good bit of talk about today. Some activities coming up and some other things that we want to visit with y'all today. So we'll get right into it, and I'll turn it over to you, Vince, for our first section.
Okay, Jason, thank y'all for having me. Yeah, it's here in central Louisiana and South Louisiana, we got there's a lot of crop here in central and South Louisiana, and we're in the probably peaked over the top of the rice harvest, and most of the corn is out. Some early soybeans being harvested. So many of our cattle producers are also they're row crop guys, so they're busy in the fields right now harvesting crop. So but it's certainly been a challenge. Unlike the northern reaches of the state where you guys are at, you haven't had the rains we've been having over the last, I'm going to say 2 weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer stretch than that. Um, so we're saturated in areas, to be honest with you. We belly ached about not making enough hay early on, and um, it's a little bit too much too late, so to speak. We're going to have some pastures that are growing real well right now with this high humidity, high heat. As Dr. Strahan likes to refer to it, it's Africa hot right now with this humidity, and grass is really growing. Hay patches are growing as well too. So those who strung themselves out and went and bought some of that $7, $8, $900 blend fertilizer to put on that first shot of fertilizer back, July when we saw the rain coming, that they're getting some benefit out of it, but it's time to get in the fields and cut it now because it's getting overgrown, honestly. So we're from one extreme to the other in a 4 to 5 week period, so to speak. With that being said, there are some needs for hay going west of here. That I know that they're getting a lot of rain in Texas and Oklahoma and even out to West Texas, but it's probably going to be too little, too late, so to speak, and too much at one time, so to get any benefit out of it. So we do have a number of producers that are waiting in the wings to send hay out west, and they've lifted some of the restrictions on some of these wider bale configurations going on trucks, so that's helped out some. But as I started off, many of our cattle producers are also crop producers. So the cattle deal has been kind of mundane. Anticipating some winter pasture plantings coming up here in 6 weeks from now, so to speak. So they're making their intentions known as far as ryegrass and either some clovers and. But again, at the cost of doing business, as we spoke all year long, I don't think they're going to stick their necks out too far on doing anything overly because just the cost of doing business. So I think we'll see a fair amount of ryegrass, or the same amount of ryegrass being planted as we have in the past. I don't think there's too much of anything strange going to go on as far as any extra plantings of clover and wheat or any oats here, because our topography is too flat. We don't have the slope that you guys have in the north, so we don't plant a whole bunch of other stuff other than ryegrass and rely on our naturally growing clovers here. So talking to a few guys down in the marsh, south of I-10, south of Intercoastal, believe it or not, they're still recovering from Laura and Delta, trying to get fence reestablished. Material's been an issue all along. Some of them are making strides with that, getting material. Some of that's kind of coming to intuition as there's supplies out there now. So they're making some progress with that. So our coastal reaches, where the majority of our cattle generally preside, may see some population going back after the hurricane season. So with hurricane season upon us, and we're reaching that peak, a lot of them are very nervous right now. as always, year to year, this is a nervous time of the year for them. But they're anticipating going back on some, joint grass and some of the native species of grasses there in the fall once we get these rains. And honestly, they just recently got some substantial rains in the last 3 to 4 weeks that provided some growth to some of those marsh pastures. So it may be a pie in the sky, so to speak. They're getting their fences up. They're getting some growth, but they had some dry conditions to get those fences done. So they'll be back in business, not to what we've known in the past, pre-Hurricane Rita and that era, but there are some people that are staunch and devoted about raising cattle down there, so they're going to be going back. So right now, people are just kind of testing the waters on ryegrass plantings, and kind of waiting and see what the market's going to do. There's some favoritism in the market, as I'm sure Jason's going to allude to some market situations, but it looks a little more optimistic than it did a month or two ago. So hopefully moving forward, despite the drought conditions and herd sellouts and reductions and the kill of replacement heifers going into the consumer market, we might see some benefits there as far as return on our dollar going forward. So it's about all I have right now. We just, there's a lot of question on hay again, and even some rice straw being baled, but honestly, we had too much rain to get any balers in rice fields to get any of that straw done. So it's just not feasible to do that. It's just the wet conditions of growing rice in South Louisiana. You don't bale hay when it rains. You don't bale straw when it rains. So, but I just want to mention we will have a Master Cattleman program starting up. October the 4th will be the first date. We haven't put the registration out yet, but we will do so later on this week. It will be held in Ville Platte at the Chauncey Pete Multi-Use Barn, which is a little west of the Ville Platte area in Evangeline Parish. We tried to do one out in Rose Pine, and we had a minimal amount of interest in that. So the people I did have interested were from that Evangeline, St. Landry, of Falls Parish area, where we've had a good rapport of people wanting to participate with that program. So kind of brought it back closer to that area, and I think we'll have a good draw going into that. So registration will close on September 28th. First class will be October the 4th. So, but that'll be forthcoming, and we'll have it out on the news update with the link at some point in the near future.
Thank you, Vince. I got a couple of questions for you before we move on to Lee. So one, just in the last week, we've started seeing some pretty good populations of fall armyworm. I mean, this is the time of year that we expect to see them. So are y'all seeing any down there? And the second question is where y'all at on rice harvest right now? So I've had, just in the last couple of weeks, I've had several folks saying they're having a hard time getting their hands on rice bran. I don't know if that has to do with maybe the rice harvest is a little bit delayed right now or what that has to do with, but just curious to where y'all are with that rice harvest.
Well, for the first question on armyworms, we are starting to see some activity from birds, and I can't say that there's a great number of people that applied any insecticides for control, because when we get accelerated growth from this rainfall, they're not as noticeable as in droughty conditions. So with the expense of doing business today, as we've talked about over and over again, people are not going to stretch themselves out going, make insecticide applications when we got grass growing hand over fist. So there's not a lot of concern with that, but there are some worms and they're not real aggressive because, again, with not having droughty conditions, you don't see the effects quite as badly. To answer your question on the rice harvest, we're probably 75% to 80% complete on rice harvest. But the brand issue is there is one exclusive brand dealer in the Crowley area where there's multiple milling facilities, and they're probably not milling a whole lot of rice at the moment. They're concentrating on storage right now. So they don't mill it as fast as they harvest it. There's a lot of on-farm storage and a lot of commercial facilities that are storing right now. But I would anticipate some milling. It just depends on supply and demand in the market for milled rice, So with that being said, that'd be a complete shot in the dark if I told you they'd start tomorrow and they're not going to start for 2 months. So I can't really answer that question, but peak of the harvest is behind us, and anticipate, we'll start to see some milling increasing over the next 6 weeks.
Was the harvest pretty good?
Yeah, the harvest is actually, we had some good yields, and it's been good.
All right, good deal. Appreciate that.
All right.
Lee, gonna turn it over to you, bud.
Thank you, Jason. Glad you're back too, by the way. Glad to have Jason back with us, and hope y'all are having a good day of it today. What a difference 2 weeks makes. The last time we recorded one of these news updates, I was wailing and gnashing my teeth as usual about something or another. Vince thinks I always got to have something to complain about. Maybe he's right. But we were talking about the hot weather. It was in the high 90s, dry. And now today, as we're recording this, and I'm sure tomorrow when this will be published, we have some areas that are in flash flood watches and warnings as we speak. Widespread rainfall. I looked on the radar earlier today. Today's Monday, of course, and there was rain stretching from the Mississippi River all the way to west of Fort Worth, and it was all headed our way. And so it's been a blessing. It's been greatly appreciated. I think we talked last visit about the fact that there were pockets of green around, so and more widespread drought. Even those folks down northern Sabine, South DeSoto way have been picking up a little bit of rainfall. I talked to Joshua Sally, the county agent down there in DeSoto earlier in the day, and they picked up some rain down that way. So that's a great thing, and I believe there's more to come. We were kind of talking earlier in the day about the long range forecast, and there's a pretty good chance of rain, and just as importantly, the temperatures are fairly moderate moving out. So this time of year, you always kind of have to be concerned about getting a good rainfall event and then popping right back up to 100 and losing a lot of that moisture. But it looks like this event's going to be kind of long lived as far as moderation of temperatures. Pasture conditions, it's amazing to me. It's truly an amazing thing to watch what happens whenever you get some rain in this country. And that doesn't matter if it's the Red River Valley or up in these hills. You get a little rain after a drought, and this grass just does a good job of popping back, especially in areas kind of like Vince stated, where folks spent the money on some fertilized hay fields that have been fertilized, whether it be litter or commercial fertilizer, are really popping right now after several rain events scattered out over the last week. So they're greatly improved from the last time we visited. Do want to make mention, we're starting to see some perilla mint show up. I hadn't heard any cases of any cattle getting down with it or dying of it, but that's a concern this time of the year always, and it's starting to rear its head this time. Be on the lookout for that. If you don't know what that is, then count yourself fortunate that you've never dealt with it. If you have any questions on it, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to talk you through it and some management strategies concerning that. Like Vince and Jason stated, there's been some armyworms around. I wouldn't call them widespread or prevalent. Seen them on signal grass of all things. Most recently, if you want to lay your eyes on some, you go take a look at some signal grass. Some in some crabgrass, and very few in Bermuda. Most people aren't treating them up here just yet. They're waiting on getting this rainfall event out of the way and kind of sit back and watch what happens attitude towards it. A lot of times this time of the year when we're talking about armyworms, if it's a normal year and people have put up a lot of hay and they don't, and hay prices are low and et cetera and so forth, if they get an outbreak of armyworms, a lot of times they won't treat. If they don't view it as an economic benefit to treat and make that hay. I can tell y'all this year, every pound of hay produced is appreciated by somebody. If you don't appreciate it on your own operation, then you can sell it to somebody even far away as Texas, and they'll appreciate it, and you'll appreciate the price as well. So scout those fields and take a look at it. Be monitoring those populations. Don't let them get away from you by any means. And once again, just like with the Peril Mint, reach out to us if we can help you on some management strategies on that. Calves are continuing to be moved to market. I say calves, we're not seeing any yearlings move right now. Pretty much all the yearlings have moved, and we're pretty much 100% into these what I call calves. Some of them unweaned, some of them have got a little bit of weaning and some shots to them and stuff like that. So they're being met by good demand for sure. High prices in most instances. I do want to make kind of a special mention of the fact that a lot of y'all out there, I know a lot of people in Louisiana and probably some folks listening to this news update. Maybe their sideline business or wouldn't be their whole operation, but a sideline of their business could be grazing some of these lightweight calves on ryegrass, wheat, oats, some kind of combination of winter forage, and turn around reselling those things. Folks, if you study these prices on these light grazing weight calves, study your lesson. They're pretty salty right now. And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from grazing any calves this winter. There may still be money yet to make on these light grazing weight cattle, but they're not as cheap as they have been in the last few years this time of year. So if you hadn't already sat down and talked with your banker on how much to apportion for your cattle purchases this fall and winter, you better sit down and up some numbers on purchase prices a little bit. Real briefly, I do want to mention that we've announced the dates of our pregnancy determination clinic. We're going to have 2 dates this year. This will be at the Hill Farm Research Station. It's going to be October the 18th and 20th. And if you want more information on that, get on the waiting list on that. Give the research station a call. Number's 318-927-2578, or you can reach out to one of us and we'll get you the information you need on that. The final thing, and I jotted this down as a note before we even started recording this, and Jason, it's kind of funny we talked about it, but so we're going to talk about a couple of positions in particular, but also I wanted to make mention, if you or someone you know has ever had an interest in coming to work for the LSU Ag Center, now is just about as good a time as any, because we have quite a few positions open, and they're all across the board, whether it be in extension or on the research side of things. 4-H, there's several 4-H positions open across the state, several county agent jobs open across the state. So you or someone you know, your kids, grandkids, if someone finished up school in May or is finishing up pretty soon and looking for a career with our organization working for LSU, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to talk to them about it, kind of point them in the right direction. The position I, in particular, want to kind of make mention of is the fact that we're going to be hiring a beef researcher position. This will be a PhD level position, and it'll be based out of the Hill Farm Research Station, 100% working with cattle. So if you know somebody that happens to have a PhD in animal science and they're looking for a career, get in touch with us. We'll point them in the right direction. That being said, Jason, that's all I got, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Lee. Just to add a little commentary to what you were saying on those calves. So while you were talking, I went ahead and pulled up where we set on a 5-year average on those calves, and we're sitting plus or minus 50 cents a pound above an average price on those calves. So I think that just reiterates what you're saying, that I think the term was salty, and they're doing pretty well right now. Appreciate that report. So
and Jason, if you don't mind me interrupting, that's a good thing. Those prices being what I refer to as salty, that's a good thing for all us cow-calf producers. Just clear there.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's time that the cattlemen caught a break and did get some good prices. And even at these good prices, these input prices are still kind of suppressing that a little bit. But I I'll go out there on a limb. I don't think we've seen the end of it yet. I mean, I think these calf prices, if you look at the fundamentals and the number of replacement females and cows that have been killed over the past 6 months, I believe we're looking at some really, really good calf prices going forward. I think they'll just get better. The field conditions over in the northeast part of the state. So like Lee said a while ago, we are recording this on Monday. Was on the phone with some folks this morning. There's some places up on the over on the eastern side of Union Parish and over in the western side of Ouachita that received a little over 6 inches of rain between last night and this morning. So a lot of rainfall, but even prior to that, over the previous week, we caught several days there where some showers came through, and it's as Lee said, it will change the color of the landscape really, really quick. And we went from brown, looking like we were just burning up because we were dealing with those 100-degree days consistently, and it really changed the color of the landscape quick, and we are definitely appreciative of that. So I think in my mind, what the interesting thing that will be to see as a result of some pretty timely rainfalls across a wide swath of the southern part of the U.S. I mean, they got snow out in Colorado, and then rainfalls coming all the way across the Corn Belt and down into the southern part of the U.S. Is that going to slow down some of those early wean calves and some of these cull cows? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if we see some of those start slowing down a little bit. Like Lee said, there's not enough feeders out there really to speak of anymore. But there's a lot of calves. There's a lot of those spring-born calves that are looking to go to town, and it'll be interesting to see if that changes those grazing opportunities a little bit, allows them to keep them on hand a little bit longer with some increased grass. So in my mind, that'll be something interesting to see if we did get enough rain out of this system and the systems we got coming, because I don't think that's the end of it. I think we got a couple more systems coming across that may change that dynamic a little bit. And on August 1st, so that was so the cattle on feed report that was released Friday that goes back to August 1st. I'll spit it out in a minute, guys. We got that report on Friday. So you got to remember that report is always a month behind. So we're getting numbers now that basically cover July. So that report came out Friday. So it gives us the numbers that were reported as of August the 1st, 2022. Cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market in the United States. For feedlots with a capacity of 1,000 head or more, totaled 11.2 million head. That inventory was 1% above August 1, 2021. Estimated feeder supplies outside of feedlots were down 2.7% year over year. And placements in feedlots totaled 1.77 million head, which was 2.2% above 2021. So even though that could be construed as a bearish report, and I think I would debate that a little bit because of when this report is covering. So we got to stop and think about this report is covering July. In July, we were in a major culling. I mean, everybody was culling cows. Cows were going to town. Early wean calves were going to town. Folks were in dire straits for grass. Everybody was looking at the possibility of not being able to find hay. There were a lot of cattle going to town. And so a lot of those feeders were being pushed into the feedlots because they were running out of grass. So a lot of those cattle were being pushed into the feedlot early. Just because that could be construed as a bearish report, I'm going to have to disagree. That I think the fundamentals are there, that we're still in a bullish situation, a bullish market. I don't think that pushes it over, but there'll be speculators out there that'll try to say because the inventory was up that'll be a a bearish market, but I'm going to have to disagree with that. I think the take-home message in that report was placement weights. So typically, placements over 700 pounds rule the roost. That's typically where we look at those placement weights being at going into the feed yard. But in this report, feedlot placements were on calves or feeders over 700 pounds was 2.5% down, right? So we were 2.5% less feeders weighing over 700 pounds. And then we were up 9.5% on feeders weighing less than 700 pounds. So we got a lot of those calves that were being pushed into the feed yard early. Again, drought. They were running out of grass. So I think that says a lot about we sent a lot of calves or a lot of feeders to town earlier than what we might have wanted them to go to town. So that is the third month that we've placed these lightweight feeders as compared to these heavyweight feeders. And again, that's in my mind, that's all drought related, looking at the time period that this report is covering. Slaughter volumes for the past week, for that weekend in August the 19th, were 661,000 head, up from 647,000 head the previous week, but down a little bit as we compare that to last year. So we had a little over 666,000 head the same week last year. This is the first weekly decline from the prior year in many weeks. Domestic and export demand for beef continues to be better than expected. As we'll see in some of these box beef prices, the choice box beef closed the week at $264.58 a hundred. That's up just 45 cents a hundred, with a choice select spread of $26.15, which is up just 15 cents a hundred from the previous week. But that is still $14.70 a hundred higher than the 5-year average. So anytime we can keep that type of choice select spread, that tells us that we've still got some pretty good, excellent beef demand in the marketplace. As reported in the National Weekly Direct Slaughter Cattle Negotiated Purchaser Report on a confirmed 101,555 head. And y'all, for negotiated purchases report, that's a lot of cattle for negotiated purchases, 101,000. So that's a lot of cattle to be reported in that section. So for the week in the Southern Plains, live purchases traded $1 to $2 higher, from 141 to 142. In Nebraska, live purchases traded 50 cents to $2 higher, from 146 to 148.50, with a few jumping up there to 151. That's some good money on fat cattle. In the Western Corn Belt for the week, live purchases traded $2 higher, from 148 to 150. Live cattle futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with October up 50 cents at 145.25, and December up 42 cents at 150.97. So live cattle futures ended the week mostly even when compared to the week open. 5 to 600 pound steers, medium and large ones and twos, sold between 175 and 192. So that's $2 lower to $9 higher when compared to the previous week. I'll reiterate this report or this comment to you. So that's the averages for the plainer type cattle, 5 to 600 pounds, 175 to 192. If you got some cattle that really fit the bill, they may not have a whole lot of flesh on them. They're just some cattle that are in the condition that they're ready to go out on some grass. They were up over $2 a pound. But just those plainer type cattle, 175 to 192 on those 5 to 6 weights, that's still some good money, y'all. We just need these input prices to help us out a little bit. 700 to 800 pound feeder steers, medium and large ones and twos, sold between 171 and 178. So that's steady to $29 higher when compared to the previous week. Future market settlements in the front months ended the week with September trading down 52 cents at 184.75, October down 90 cents at 186.77, November down 80 cents at 188.70. So on those 7-weight cattle, looks like we're staying consistently into the mid to 180s on those in the futures markets. Again, some really good prices. So as we compare the week open with the week close, the week ended on those futures markets ended about $1 to $2 lower as compared to the week open. So on our kill cows, these markets have been steadily declining week over week, and I think a lot of that just has to do with these packers are really not trying to fill up their coffers with the grind right now. Grilling season starting to wrap up. We're getting close to Labor Day, which marks pretty much the end of the grilling season. So they're really not trying to fill those coffers with the grind. Lean cull cows, that's those cows in thin condition, ended the week up a penny at 75 cents a pound. Boning utility, that's those in moderate condition, ended the week up 3 cents at 83 cents a pound. And breakers, those in high condition, ended the week down 4 cents at 80 cents a pound. Still some pretty decent prices on those cull cows, not near what we were seeing a month or so ago, but still some decent prices on those culls. Looking at our feedstuffs, so the reason I was asking Vince about rice bran, so those of you who may not feed a lot of commodity, you may not be aware, but rice bran is a pretty popular feedstuff for blending into rations in Louisiana just because of availability and price. Typically, August and September is when we encourage folks, if you're going to be purchasing commodities to feed, August and September typically is the month you really need to be bearing down on that and making those decisions. That's typically when we see the majority of our feedstuffs or those commodities declining in price ever so slightly, but it gives you a little bit of price break in there that makes it worthwhile to start booking some of those. Soybean meal up $29 at $513.70. Soybean hulls up $5 at $160. That's the first jump we've seen in soybean hulls in about 6 months. It did go up $5, but just wanted to make that comment. That's the first time we've seen any kind of price increase on these soybean hulls. Rice bran steady at $190 a ton. Cottonseed meal up $7.50 at $410 a ton. Whole cottonseed up $5 at $410 a ton. We don't see that a whole lot where cottonseed meal and whole cottonseed even up like that. We just don't see that very often, but they have evened up right now. Corn gluten feed meal steady at $760 a ton, and that's that 60% feed or 60% meal. DDG's down $2.75 at $248.25 a ton. Still way too high for DDGs. That's a good commodity, and that just puts it out of most people's price points at that price, but still a good product. And then corn down 2 cents a bushel at $6.45 a bushel. And that'll wrap up our market. So I do want to put a couple of things out there. So I'm going to follow up on what Lee was saying about some of the opportunities that we have within the Ag Center right now. So he mentioned one of the PhD positions we've got there at the Hill Farm. We've also got an extension position there that a bachelor's or a master's degree in animal science or equivalent field. So we've got a extension poultry position there, working in the broiler houses there, but also going out and providing education for our poultry growers. I think that's a really good opportunity. We have been fighting for that position for a good long while, and we're excited to get it going back up again. So poultry is the largest animal ag production industry in the state of Louisiana. And we're just happy that the Ag Center has seen the importance of getting that position going again and getting somebody in there that'll really be beneficial to our poultry growers. Lee and I both, just because of the geography that we're in, he and I spend a lot of time with poultry growers. Poultry growers are some of our larger cattle producers. I mean, they just because they've got a lot of poultry manure that they can use on pasture land and hay land, they also have a good a good population of beef cattle out there. So Lee and I spend a good bit of time with them, and he and I both will be on that interview committee. And I think both of us are very committed to making sure that we get the right person in that. And we're also on the committee for hiring that beef researcher that he mentioned. And Lee and I both have a strong heart for the Hill Farm just because we were both raised right there close to it, and both of us have spent a lot of time there, and we want to see that succeed, and we'll make sure that we get the right person in there. Northeast Beef and Forage Field Day, September the 15th, over at J&S Cattle in Bastrop. So we'll put a link to that registration flyer in the description, so you can get registered for that. If you're already aware of it and planning on coming and you haven't registered, y'all, if y'all can register for that, we would appreciate it. It helps us be better managers of the meal. Make sure we have enough, but make sure we don't have a lot of food left over as well. So on September the 13th, our next Beef Brunch webinar will be hosted by one of the guys on here, Mr. Vince Deshotel. So Vince is going to be discussing ryegrass utilization on that next webinar on September the 13th. And again, I had Preg Determination Clinic down there, and Lee's already visited with you about that. And that's in my mind, that's one of the most practical, in-depth classes that we offer. And I know it's a lot of information in a very short period of time, but it is very practical. Got some really good instructors that come in for that and provide some good information. So if you've ever had the desire to learn a little bit about pregnancy determination, we spend a good bit of time on rectal palpation, but we also spend some time on utilizing blood draws and blood samples for determining pregnancy. What are the pros and cons of those? We spend a good bit of time talking about that as well. But we'll have a description of those events coming up in the description of the video or in the podcast format for you. And we appreciate y'all joining us every other week for these news updates. We certainly hope that we're providing you the information that you're looking for. We try to keep this as timely as possible and just as practical as possible. Those of y'all that know us know that we're pretty down to earth. We try not to get too far out there in the woods, but try to give y'all some information to help you out on your operations. Lee, Vince, any y'all got anything to add? All right. Well, we certainly appreciate it, and we will see y'all again in a couple of weeks.